When a man like Jimmy Hoffa goes missing, the mystery is darker and deeper than a simple disappearance. In the ruthless world of labor unions and organized crime, Hoffa's vanishing act is a tale woven with ambition, power, and betrayal. Join us as we unravel the life and legacy of James Riddle Hoffa, a man who rose from humble beginnings to lead the most powerful union in America, only to be ensnared in a web of corruption and mafia ties. His story didn't just end, it vanished into the shadows. Buckle up as we dive into one of the most chilling unsolved mysteries in American history, the disappearance of Jimmy Hoffa. Jimmy Hoffa was born in Brazil, Indiana, on a cold Valentine's Day in 1913. His father, John, a hard-working man of German descent, passed away in 1920 from a brutal lung disease, leaving young Hoffa, just 7 years old, to face the world without him. His mother, Viola, was of Irish ancestry and had to move the family to Detroit in 1924, seeking better opportunities. Hoffa left school at 14, diving into the harsh world of manual labor to support his family. In 1937, Hoffa married Josephine Posiłak, an 18-year-old laundry worker of Polish heritage. They met during a non-unionized laundry workers' strike, a foreshadowing of Hoffa's lifelong battle for workers' rights. Their union bore 2 children, Barbara Ann Kranzer and James P. Hoffa, and they managed to buy a modest home in northwestern Detroit for $6,800 in 1939. They later owned a simple summer cottage in Orion Township, Michigan. Hoffa's rise began in the gritty aisles of a grocery chain, where he saw firsthand the brutal working conditions and substandard wages. Even as a teenager, Hoffa's bravery and charisma stood out, earning him respect among his fellow workers. By 1932, after clashing with an abusive foreman, Hoffa left the grocery chain and joined Local 299 of the Teamsters in Detroit. The Teamsters were a force to be reckoned with, growing from 75,000 members in 1933 to over 1 million by 1951, thanks in no small part to Hoffa's relentless efforts. He used quickie strikes and secondary boycotts, mastering the art of leverage to win contract demands and unify local trucker groups into a formidable national body. But this power came at a cost. The trucking unions were deeply entangled with organized crime, and Hoffa had to make deals with dangerous gangsters to keep the union growing. Hoffa's reputation as a fearless leader grew, but so did the scrutiny. He never drove a truck himself, but became president of Local 299 in 1946, then the combined Detroit Locals, and eventually the head of the Michigan Teamsters. His knack for navigating dangerous alliances and outmaneuvering rivals kept him in power, but it also drew the attention of federal investigators. In 1952, Hoffa became national vice president of the Teamsters, moving to Washington, D.C. to oversee a rapidly expanding organization. By 1957, he was president, but his leadership was under constant attack. The AFL-CIO expelled the Teamsters, and Hoffa's battles with rivals like Walter Reuther and government officials, especially Attorney General Robert Kennedy, became legendary. Kennedy's relentless pursuit of Hoffa led to numerous indictments. In 1963, Hoffa was convicted of jury tampering in Tennessee and later of mail and wire fraud in Chicago, leading to a total of 13 years in prison. Despite these setbacks, Hoffa remained a symbol of union power, working tirelessly to expand the Teamsters even while facing imprisonment. Hoffa's legacy is one of power, corruption, and mystery. He was a man who could not be easily silenced, a leader whose alliances with the underworld were as notorious as his dedication to his union. His life was a high-stakes game of loyalty and betrayal, a dark dance with crime that left an indelible mark on American labor history. When Hoffa entered prison, Frank Fitzsimmons, a seemingly loyal ally, took over as acting president of the union. Hoffa, ever the strategist, planned to run the union from behind bars, using Fitzsimmons as his puppet. However, Fitzsimmons soon distanced himself from Hoffa, loosening the iron grip Hoffa had maintained over the Teamsters. This betrayal stung Hoffa, who resigned as Teamsters president on June 19, 1971, with Fitzsimmons officially taking the helm on July 9, 1971. Less than 5 years into his 13-year sentence, Hoffa was unexpectedly released from prison on December 23, 1971, after President Richard Nixon commuted his sentence to time served. The release came with a hefty $1.75 million pension payout, a move that raised many eyebrows. However, this freedom came with a bitter pill. Hoffa was barred from engaging in any union activities until 1980. Hoffa argued that he never agreed to this condition, suspecting foul play by Nixon's administration and Teamster leaders. Determined to reclaim his power, Hoffa sued to overturn the restriction but lost. His fight to regain control of the union was marred by opposition from the Mafia, particularly Anthony Provenzano, a former ally turned bitter enemy. Provenzano, now a feared mobster, had threatened Hoffa's family, warning he would kidnap and harm his grandchildren if Hoffa pursued his comeback. Other Mafia figures, including Anthony Giacolone and his brother Vito, were also involved, allegedly acting as intermediaries between Hoffa and Provenzano. Hoffa's desperation to reclaim his throne grew. On July 30th, 1975, he arranged a meeting with Provenzano and Giacolone at the Matthews Red Fox restaurant in Bloomfield Township. The meeting, however, was a trap. Hoffa left his home at 1:15 p.m., stopping by the office of his friend Louis Linto, who had unknowingly helped set up the fatal meeting. When Hoffa arrived at the restaurant, Provenzano and Giacolone were nowhere to be found. Frustrated, Hoffa called his wife and Linto, complaining about being stood up. Witnesses last saw Hoffa pacing the parking lot and talking to two men who approached him. By 2:45 p.m., he vanished without a trace. His car was later found unlocked, but there was no sign of him. Hoffa's wife reported him missing the next morning, triggering a massive investigation. The only solid lead came from a maroon 1975 Mercury Marquis Brougham belonging to Anthony Giacolone's son. Hoffa's foster son, Chucky O'Brien, had borrowed the car that day. Police dogs later identified Hoffa's scent inside the vehicle, and a strand of Hoffa's hair was found. Despite these clues, Giacolone and Provenzano had alibis, and no charges were filed. Years of investigations, including a 56-page FBI report known as the Hoffex Memo, pointed to Hoffa's murder, orchestrated by the Mafia to prevent his return to power. His body was never found, leading to endless theories and speculation. The FBI believed that O'Brien had driven Hoffa to his death, but no one was ever prosecuted. Hoffa was declared legally dead in 1982, leaving behind a legacy shrouded in mystery and dark intrigue. Even today, the shadow of Jimmy Hoffa looms large, a reminder of the dangerous intersections of power, crime and ambition. When a mobster like Billy Dauber steps out of line, their fate is sealed tighter than a drum. In the dark, unforgiving world of the Chicago outfit, crossing the wrong people can lead to a death more brutal than your worst nightmares. Billy Dauber, a hitman turned renegade, played a deadly game, and the stakes were his life. From his rise as a feared enforcer to his fiery demise, this is the chilling tale of a man who gambled with death and lost. Let's dive into the bloody saga of Billy Dauber, a story of betrayal, power and a ruthless end orchestrated by the very family he once served. William E. Billy Dauber entered the world on June 30th, 1935. He was no ordinary man. Known as a feared Chicago mobster, hitman, and key player in the South Side chop shop ring, Dauber's life was shrouded in darkness and blood. Billy Dauber's story begins in the gritty streets of Chicago. From a young age, he was drawn into the sinister world of crime, recruited by the notorious James "Jimmy the Bomber" Katwara. Katwara, a puppet master in the realm of illegal gambling and vice, saw potential in Dauber and took him under his wing. Despite being one of the few Southerners in the Chicago outfit, Dauber quickly became a valuable asset. With ruthless efficiency, he was suspected in over 20 unsolved homicides between 1969 and 1980, all part of the deadly struggle for control of Stephen Ostrowski's lucrative chop shop operation. In 1973, Dauber's criminal activities caught up with him, leading to his conviction for mail fraud and the interstate transportation of a stolen car linked to an unsolved murder. After serving his time and being released in 1976, Dauber didn't lay low. Instead, he switched allegiances to Albert Caesar Tocco, a rival mobster who was steadily gaining power in the South Side. This defection didn't go unnoticed. On July 28, 1978, Katwara was found brutally murdered in his red Cadillac, a grim sign of the treacherous world Dauber inhabited. The years that followed were fraught with tension. Dauber, known for his hot temper and growing discontent, began to clash with his former associates. His wife Charlotte often voiced her fears about his safety. Rumors spread that Dauber was considering becoming an informant to escape the mounting federal indictments he faced. He was also suspected of running unauthorized rackets, further straining his relationship with the outfit. On July 2nd, 1980, the end came swiftly and violently for Billy Dauber. After securing a continuation on charges of concealing cocaine and weapons, Dauber and his wife left the Will County Courthouse. When questioned by reporters about his criminal activities, he simply replied, "I just live quietly in this country, that's all." As they drove home, a Ford van pulled up alongside their car. Without warning, gunmen opened fire. Dauber tried to evade the hail of bullets, but lost control and crashed into an apple tree. The car was then set ablaze, the flames consuming any hope of survival. It was later discovered by two farmers, a scene of carnage and destruction. The attack was later confessed to by Gerald Scarpelli, a longtime associate of the outfit. The hit had been carried out by some of the most ruthless enforcers: Frank Calabrese Sr., Ronnie Jarrett, Butch Petrocelli, and Scarpelli himself. Dauber's attempt to climb the ladder of power had ended in a brutal and fiery death, a stark reminder of the deadly game he played. In the end, Billy Dauber's life was a tale of ambition, betrayal, and violence, his name forever etched in the dark annals of Chicago's criminal underworld.
When a mobster makes his mark in the world of organized crime, his life becomes a high-stakes game of survival, where one misstep could lead to a violent end. Dutch Schultz, a notorious figure in New York City's underworld during the 1920s and 30s, lived this perilous existence. Schultz amassed a fortune through bootlegging and running the numbers racket, but his criminal empire faced serious threats from both law enforcement and rival gangsters. Let's run the numbers on Dutch Schultz's criminal career and brutal ending as a gangster. Arthur Simon Flegenheimer, later notorious as Dutch Schultz, was born on August 6, 1901, to German-Jewish immigrants Hermann and Emma Flegenheimer. Their marriage in Manhattan in November 1900 seemed a prelude to a promising American dream. However, this dream quickly soured. Arthur's younger sister Helen arrived in 1904, and by 1910, Hermann had vanished like a ghost in the night, leaving Emma to navigate the harsh streets of Manhattan alone. The trauma of abandonment left young Arthur in denial, claiming until his dying day that his father had died honorably, despite the murky details surrounding Hermann's disappearance. Dropping out of school in the 8th grade, Arthur became the breadwinner, taking on any job he could find. From 1916 to 1919, he toiled as a feeder and pressman for various companies, but honest work couldn't contain the dark spark within him. Arthur's descent into crime began innocuously enough, working at a neighborhood nightclub owned by a minor mobster. He started by robbing craps games but soon graduated to burglary. His criminal aspirations were cut short when he was caught breaking into an apartment and sent to the notorious Blackwell's Island prison. His defiance got him transferred to a work farm in West Hampton, Long Island, but even there, he plotted his escape, earning him a longer sentence when he was inevitably caught. Released on parole on December 8, 1920, Arthur returned to Schultz Trucking, where the Prohibition era presented lucrative opportunities. As the company shifted to smuggling liquor from Canada, Arthur, now dubbed Dutch Schultz, plunged into the seedy underworld of organized crime. His rise was swift and ruthless. By the mid-1920s, Schultz had become a bouncer at the Hub Social Club, a speakeasy in the Bronx run by gangster Joey No. Impressed by Schultz's volatile temper and brutality, No made him a partner. Together, they opened more illegal drinking joints, bringing in beer from Frankie Dunn in Union City, New Jersey. Schultz often rode shotgun on the beer trucks, warding off hijackers with his trademark ferocity. Conflict brewed with John and Joe Rock, brothers who ran a rival bootlegging operation in the Bronx. After some initial resistance, elder brother John agreed to cooperate with Schultz, but Joe refused. The No Schultz gang responded with typical brutality, kidnapping Joe, beating him senselessly and blinding him with a gauze bandage smeared with gonorrhea discharge. Joe's family paid $35,000 for his release, and the gang faced little opposition afterward, expanding their territory across the Bronx. The No Schultz operation thrived, rivaling the Mafia's 5 families. Their expansion into Manhattan sparked a bloody bootleg war with the Irish mob, led by Jack Legs Diamond. On October 16, 1928, No was ambushed and fatally wounded outside a speakeasy. Schultz was left seething with rage and thirsting for revenge. Arnold Rothstein, a Jewish mob kingpin, was found shot dead on November 6, 1928. Although officially linked to a gambling debt, many believed Schultz ordered the hit in retaliation for No's death. George Hump McManus, allegedly Rothstein's killer, called Schultz's lawyer immediately after the crime, adding fuel to the fire. Schultz's vendetta extended to Legs Diamond, who survived several assassination attempts before being killed in 1931. Internal strife within Schultz's gang further complicated matters. Vincent Call, one of Schultz's enforcers, demanded equal partnership. When Schultz refused, Call formed his own crew, igniting a bloody gang war. Call earned the nickname Mad Dog after a child was killed during a botched assassination attempt. In February 1932, Call was gunned down in a drugstore phone booth, a fitting end for a man of his ruthless reputation. Schultz expanded his criminal empire into extortion, targeting New York's restaurant owners and workers. Partnering with Jules Mogilevsky, alias Julie Martin, Schultz forced restaurant owners to join the Metropolitan Restaurant and Cafeteria Owners Association through intimidation and violence. When Schultz suspected Martin of skimming profits, he confronted him in a meeting in March 1935. Fueled by alcohol and rage, Schultz shot Martin in a fit of fury, later claiming he had cut out Martin's heart. U.S. Attorney Thomas Dewey aimed to bring Schultz down for tax evasion. Schultz's first trial in Syracuse ended in a hung jury amid suspicions of jury tampering. Facing retrial in Malone, New York, Schultz launched a charm offensive, donating to local businesses and helping sick children, securing an acquittal in 1935. Mayor Fiorello LaGuardia, outraged, ordered Schultz's arrest if he returned to New York City, forcing Schultz to relocate to Newark. As legal battles drained his finances, Schultz's strained relationships with his gang members worsened. Bo Weinberg, Schultz's chief lieutenant, sought advice from New Jersey mob boss Longy Zwillman and connected with Sicilian gangster Charlie Lucky Luciano. Weinberg wanted to maintain control of Schultz's gang, but Luciano aimed to take over Schultz's territory. After Schultz's acquittal, Luciano assured him everything was fine, but Schultz remained suspicious. Schultz proposed assassinating Thomas Dewey, a move opposed by the National Crime Syndicate. Furious, Schultz vowed to kill Dewey himself. The syndicate, fearing a crackdown, ordered Schultz's elimination. On October 23, 1935, Schultz was ambushed at the Palace Chop House in Newark by Murder Inc. hitmen Charles the Bug Workman and Emmanuel Mendy Weiss. Schultz was shot in the bathroom, and his gang members were gunned down in the restaurant. Despite their injuries, Schultz's men returned fire, driving the assassins out. Schultz staggered out, calling for help, and his bodyguard, Bernard Lulu Rosenkrantz, managed to call an ambulance before losing consciousness. Schultz lingered for a day, speaking incoherently, before dying of peritonitis in a hospital bed on October 24, 1935. Police stenographer was able to transcribe his last words. He stated, "A boy has never wept, nor dashed 1,000 kim. You can play jacks, and girls do that with a softball and do tricks with it. Oh, dog biscuit. And when he is happy, he doesn't get snappy." He was buried in Gate of Heaven Cemetery in Hawthorne, New York, with both Catholic and Jewish rites. Schultz's last words have inspired many writers to devote works related to them. In 1941, Charles Workman was convicted of Schultz's murder and sentenced to life imprisonment. He was paroled in 1964. Schultz's last words, a bizarre stream of consciousness, were transcribed by police and have inspired numerous writers. His death marked the end of a violent and tumultuous era in New York's criminal history.
When it comes to the Prohibition era, few figures loom as large or as infamous as Michael Mickey Duffy. Known by many aliases, including John Murphy and George McEwen, Duffy's rise to power was as swift as it was brutal. A Polish-American mobster, he became one of the most dominant and feared beer bootleggers in Philadelphia and Atlantic City, locking horns with notorious rivals like Maxi Boo Boo Hoff. Let's delve into the dark and deadly world of Mickey Duffy, a man whose name became synonymous with violence, power, and the illicit trade that defined an era. Born as William Michael Cusick to Polish immigrants in Grays Ferry, Philadelphia, William changed his name to Duffy to blend in with the Irish gangs that ruled the streets. Starting with petty theft and minor offences in his youth, Duffy quickly escalated to more severe crimes like armed robbery and hijacking in his teenage years. It wasn't long before Prohibition turned him into one of the city's most notorious bootleggers. In May 1919, Duffy was arrested for assault and battery with intent to kill and served nearly 3 years in the foreboding Eastern State Penitentiary. After his release, Prohibition had taken full effect, and organized crime syndicates were thriving by smuggling and selling illegal alcohol. Duffy wasted no time and plunged headfirst into the lucrative world of bootlegging. Shortly after his release, he married Edith Craig, a decision that brought a semblance of normalcy to his chaotic life. By the early 1920s, Duffy had become a formidable force in the Delaware Valley's bootlegging scene, controlling breweries in Philadelphia, Camden, and South Jersey. He formed uneasy alliances with former rivals like Max Hassel, Harry Green, James Richardson, Charles Bodine and Nicholas Delmore. However, his rise to power wasn't without conflict. He frequently clashed with competitors like Hoffa and the Bailey brothers, leading to violent confrontations. Duffy's success allowed him to venture into legitimate businesses. He owned several prominent clubs, including the fashionable Club Cadix at 23rd and Chestnut Streets. From the opulent Ritz-Carlton Hotel, he orchestrated his bootlegging and numbers operations, but his success made him a target. On the night of February 25, 1927, as he left Club Cadix, he was ambushed by Francis Bailey and Peter Ford, who unleashed a hail of bullets from a Thompson submachine gun. Duffy was hit 3 times, his bodyguard John Bricker was killed, and Earl Brown, the club's doorman, was also wounded. This was the first time a Thompson submachine gun was used in Philadelphia's criminal underworld. Despite the attack, Duffy survived and returned to his empire with renewed determination. His violent tactics brought him into direct conflict with Reading-based bootlegger Max Hassel. Alongside Waxy Gordon, Hassel controlled several breweries in Pennsylvania and northern New Jersey. Undeterred, Duffy muscled his way into the profitable Jersey territory, forcing Hassel to surrender a brewery. By 1930, Duffy's criminal enterprises had made him immensely wealthy. He built a lavish mansion for himself and Edith in Penwyn, Pennsylvania. The Mediterranean-style villa, adorned with green satyrs and black palm trees, was a testament to his ill-gotten gains. However, Duffy's empire began to crumble following the death of John Finiello, an agent of the Bureau of Prohibition, who was killed during a raid on one of Duffy's breweries in Elizabeth, New Jersey, on September 19, 1930. The incident attracted intense scrutiny from local authorities, leading to a crackdown on his operations and growing animosity among his partners, including his bodyguard and chauffeur, Joseph Beatty. While staying at the Ambassador Hotel in Atlantic City on August 31, 1931, Duffy met his end. Unknown assailants gunned him down, leaving the case unsolved. Authorities suspected that disgruntled associates, eager to seize control of his bootlegging empire, were behind the murder. Mafia member and future boxing promoter Frankie Carbo of the Lucchese crime family was initially charged, but avoided prosecution by providing an alibi. Within months, the Philadelphia underworld was rocked by a wave of violence. Samuel E. Grossman and Albert Scale, believed to be involved in Duffy's murder, were killed at a club on Watt Street and Girard Avenue in December 1931, sparking further bloodshed among the city's criminal factions. Duffy was interred at Mount Moriah Cemetery in Philadelphia. His funeral was a spectacle, drawing thousands of onlookers. A police line kept the crowd at bay, allowing only friends and family who had special passes to enter. Thus ended the life of one of Philadelphia's most infamous bootleggers, his legacy etched in the annals of the city's dark history. As a gangster, being tough is a requirement. You can't just talk the talk, you have to look the part and walk the walk. Having a soft look is literally something that can get you killed. But mention Babyface Nelson, and you're plunged into the bloody saga of one of America's most notorious gangsters and prolific bank robbers. With the FBI branding him and his crew as public enemy number 1, Nelson's reign of terror was marked by brutal violence and high-stakes heists. Nelson, born Lester Joseph Gillis, was the son of Flemish-Belgian immigrants, entering the world on December 6, 1908, in the gritty streets of Chicago, Illinois. His descent into crime began early. At just 12 years old, on July 4, 1921, he was arrested after accidentally shooting a playmate in the jaw with a pistol he had found. This landed him over a year in the state reformatory. By the time he met Helen Wozniak, his future wife, Nelson was working at a Standard oil station in his neighborhood, which doubled as the headquarters for a gang of young tire thieves known as the Strippers. Nelson quickly fell in with them and made connections with local criminals. One of them hired him to drive bootleg alcohol throughout the Chicago suburbs. This led to his association with the Toohey Gang, a notorious suburban crime group. Within 2 years, Nelson and his new associates were deep into organized crime, focusing heavily on armed robbery. On January 6, 1930, they broke into the home of magazine executive Charles M. Richter. They bound him with adhesive tape, cut the phone lines and ransacked the house, escaping with $205,000 worth of jewelry, equivalent to $3.7 million today. Just 2 months later, they executed a similar robbery at the bungalow of Lottie Brenner von Bülow on Sheridan Road, stealing another $50,000 in jewelry. The press dubbed them the Tape Bandits. Nelson's criminal career escalated rapidly. On April 21, 1930, he robbed his first bank, netting around $4,000. A month later, he and his gang seized $25,000 worth of jewelry from home invasions. By October, he robbed the Itasca State Bank of $4,600 and soon after stole $18,000 in jewelry from the wife of Chicago Mayor Big Bill Thompson. The woman described her assailant. He had a baby face. He was good-looking, hardly more than a boy, had dark hair and was wearing a grey topcoat and a brown felt hat with a turned-down brim. Nelson's crew then botched a roadhouse robbery in Summit, Illinois, resulting in a gunfight that left 3 people dead and 3 wounded. Just 3 nights later, they robbed a tavern on Waukegan Road, where Nelson committed his first notable murder, shooting stockbroker Edwin R. Thompson dead. The winter of 1931 saw the downfall of most of the tape bandits, including Nelson. The Chicago Tribune labeled him George Babyface Nelson. Sentenced to 1 year to life in the state penitentiary at Joliet, Nelson escaped during a prison transfer in February 1932. With help from the Toohey gang, he fled west to Reno, where crime boss William Graham harbored him. Using the alias Jimmy Johnson, Nelson moved to Sausalito, California, working for bootlegger Joe Parente. Here he met future close associates John Paul Chase and Fatso Negri. Back in Reno the following winter, Nelson met Alvin Karpis and was introduced to bank robber Eddie Bentz. Teaming up with Bentz, Nelson returned to the Midwest, committing a major bank robbery in Grand Haven, Michigan, on August 18, 1933. Though the robbery was not highly lucrative, it convinced Nelson he was ready to lead his own gang. He recruited Homer Van Meter, Tommy Carroll and Eddie Green through connections at the Green Lantern Tavern in St. Paul. They robbed the First National Bank of Brainerd, Minnesota on October 23, 1933, making off with $32,000, which is about $753,000 today. Witnesses reported Nelson wildly spraying bullets at bystanders during his getaway. After collecting his wife Helen and their 4-year-old son Ronald, Nelson and his crew fled to San Antonio, Texas. There, they purchased several weapons from underworld gunsmith Hyman Lehman, including a fully automatic .38 Super Colt pistol. Nelson used this gun to kill Special Agent W. Carter Baum at Little Bohemia Lodge months later. On December 9, 1933, a local woman tipped off San Antonio police about the high-powered northern gangsters nearby. 2 days later, Tommy Carroll killed Detective H.C. Perrin and wounded Detective Al Hartman in a shootout. The Nelson gang, except for Nelson, fled San Antonio. Nelson and his wife then traveled west to the San Francisco Bay Area, where he recruited John Paul Chase and Fatso Negri for a new series of bank robberies the following spring. On March 3, 1934, John Dillinger made his famous wooden pistol escape from the jail in Crown Point, Indiana.
I'm gonna hang on to the wood.
Though the details remain disputed, it is believed Nelson's newly formed gang helped arrange the escape, with the understanding that Dillinger would repay some part of the bribe money out of his share of the first robbery. Shortly after, Nelson killed local paint salesman Theodore Kidder in a fit of rage after a minor traffic altercation. 2 days later, the gang, possibly including Hamilton, struck the Security National Bank in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, netting around $49,000. During the robbery, Nelson severely wounded motorcycle policeman Hale Keith with a burst of submachine gun fire. The gang, now labelled the Second Dillinger Gang, soon struck again, robbing the First National Bank in Mason City, Iowa on March 13th. Dillinger and Hamilton were both wounded, but they made off with $52,000. On April 3rd, federal agents ambushed and killed Eddie Green, though he was unarmed and they were unsure of his identity. After the Mason City robbery, Nelson and Chase fled west to Reno, where they killed Roy Fritsch, the chief witness against Nelson's old bosses, Bill Graham and Jim Mackay, in a federal mail fraud case. Fritsch's body was never found, believed to have been thrown down an abandoned mine shaft. Following the Little Bohemia shootout and the killing of Baum, Nelson became a high-priority target for the FBI. Despite the increasing pressure, Nelson continued his criminal activities, leading to a series of violent encounters and robberies. His notoriety peaked with his involvement in the gang's final confirmed robbery on June 30th, 1934, at the Merchants National Bank in South Bend, Indiana. The chaotic shootout resulted in multiple injuries and was the last confirmed robbery for Nelson and his gang. As the manhunt for him intensified, Nelson and his wife drifted west with John Paul Chase, hiding out in various cities. By late November, FBI agents had staked out the Lake Como Inn in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, a former hideout of Nelson's. When Nelson returned on November 27, 1934, he briefly encountered the agents before speeding away. A furious gun battle ensued outside Chicago in Barrington, resulting in the deaths of Nelson and FBI agents Herman Ed Hollis and Samuel P. Cowley. On that fateful morning, Nelson, his wife Helen, and Chase were heading south in a stolen V8 Ford. They recognized a car driven by agents Thomas McDade and William Ryan and pursued it. A shootout followed, with both cars sustaining damage. Nelson's car eventually broke down and another car, driven by agents Hollis and Cowley, began pursuing them. The ensuing gun battle was witnessed by numerous people in the street. The agents unloaded entire clips of machine gun rounds into Nelson's car. During the raging firefight, Nelson got off a deadly shot. He managed to shoot a .45 caliber slug into Hollis's head, killing him instantly. Cowley was severely wounded and left for dead. Despite being shot 9 times, Nelson managed to drive away with Chase and Helen. Nelson succumbed to his injuries later that night in a safe house, dying with his wife by his side at 7:35 p.m.